The email arrived on a Tuesday at 3:14 in the afternoon, a time I would later come to associate with the precise moment my life shattered into pieces I hadn't known existed. I was sitting in my corner office at Sterling and Associates, a boutique financial firm in the heart of Atlanta, reviewing a merger proposal that would have made my year-end bonus large enough to finally put a down payment on the house I'd been eyeing in Buckhead. The subject line was simple: the Pemberley, final confirmation. My heart did a little skip, a flutter of the pure, uncomplicated joy that came from believing, even for a moment, that the universe was finally aligning in my favor. I clicked it open, expecting the final invoice for the deposit, a confirmation of the date, perhaps a note from the event coordinator, a woman named Simone who had been so warm, so excited for me, when I'd booked the venue 6 months prior. What I found was a cancellation notice. Not for my event, but for the event I had planned. It was a form letter, cold and corporate, stating that my reservation for the Grand Ballroom at the Pemberley Hotel for October 15th had been transferred to another party per the request of the primary account holder. My name was at the top, clear as day, but next to it, in the transferred to field, was another name. A name I knew as well as my own, a name that had been woven into the fabric of my life since before I could form sentences. Simone. My younger sister. The email was signed by the director of events, a man I'd never heard of, not the warm Simone who had helped me pick out table linens and taste test 5 different kinds of wedding cake. I read the email 3 times, my brain refusing to process the words, to fit them into the reality I thought I inhabited. Simone and I had never been close. Close implied a warmth, a mutual exchange of affection that had never existed between us. Our relationship was more like a long, drawn-out Cold War, fought with passive-aggressive comments at family dinners and the silent, brutal competition for our parents' approval. I was the elder, the responsible one, the one who had worked my way through college, built a career from the ground up, paid my own bills, and never asked for a dime. She was the golden child, the one with the easy laugh and the magnetic charm, the one who had breezed through life on a current of good fortune and my parents' unwavering adoration. She had a degree in art history that she never used, a job as a social media manager at a trendy boutique hotel that was more about posing for photos than actual work, and a seemingly endless supply of friends who orbited her like planets around a particularly bright sun. I had always been the moon, steady and reliable, but never the source of the light. And now, it seemed, she had decided to eclipse me entirely. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from my mother, a woman named Celeste who had spent my entire life perfecting the art of the well-timed, devastatingly dismissive comment. Heard you changed the wedding date. Simone is so thrilled to be using the Pemberley for her engagement party. You know how much that place means to her. It's her dream venue. So generous of you to give it up. My hands were trembling. Not with sadness, not yet. That would come later, in the dark hours of the night, when the reality of what had been stolen from me would settle into my bones like a cold ache. No, this was a different kind of tremor. It was the tremor of a cage door being slammed shut. For a moment, I was that 15-year-old girl again, standing in my bedroom doorway, watching my parents coo over Simone's art project, a collage of magazine clippings, while my report card, with its straight A's and a letter from the principal commending my academic achievement, lay forgotten on the kitchen counter. I was the one who paid for my own car, my own college, my own life, while Simone's bills were quietly settled, her mistakes smoothed over, her whims treated as sacred missions. And now, they had taken the one thing I had chosen for myself, the one thing that was supposed to be mine. I picked up my phone and called Marcus. My fiancé. The man I had been with for 4 years, the man who had proposed on a beach in the Maldives with a ring that had cost him 3 months' salary, the man who I thought was my partner, my equal, my future. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice a little too bright, a little too casual for a Tuesday afternoon. Hey, babe. What's up? Did you know? I asked, my voice flat. About the venue? About Simone. There was a pause. A pause that stretched into an eternity, a silence that was louder than any confession. When he spoke again, his voice was different. It was the voice of a stranger, a man I had never really known. Look, I was going to tell you. It's just, she was so upset. The place she wanted was booked, and she saw the confirmation on your laptop when she was over last week. She was devastated, babe. You know how she is. It's not like you're that attached to the Pemberley. You just picked it because it was convenient. For her, it's a dream. It's her career. She works there. I closed my eyes, the sound of his voice washing over me, each word a small betrayal, a tiny fracture in the foundation of the life I thought we were building. It's my wedding, Marcus. Our wedding. The one you and I planned. The one we were supposed to have. It's just a building, Kira, he said, a note of impatience creeping into his voice. We can find another place. Something even better. You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic, I repeated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. She stole our wedding venue, Marcus. She went behind my back, accessed my personal email, and canceled my reservation so she could have her engagement party there. And you're telling me I'm being dramatic. She didn't steal it, he said, his voice hardening. She just transferred the booking. It's not a big deal. And she's my sister now, too. Or she's going to be. We're a family. Families do things for each other. In that moment, a cold, clear clarity washed over me, the kind that comes not from revelation, but from the simple, brutal recognition of a truth you've been avoiding for years. Marcus wasn't my partner. He was an extension of my family's dynamic, a man who had been charmed by Simone's light and had, without a second thought, aligned himself with the planet that shone brightest. I had been his moon, too, a reliable, steady presence, but never the star. I'm not your family, Marcus, I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. And you're not mine. I ended the call before he could respond. I sat in my office for a long time, the afternoon light fading to a bruised purple, the city below me a distant, indifferent hum. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, the cold clarity solidifying into something harder, something sharper. I thought about the Pemberley Hotel, the place Simone had called her dream venue, the place she worked, the place where she curated a life of beautiful images and effortless charm. I thought about my parents, about their casual dismissal of my plans, their assumption that my life was simply a resource to be plundered for Simone's benefit. I thought about Marcus, about the 4 years I had wasted, about the trust one had given so freely and had just had returned to me in pieces. And then I opened my laptop. I didn't look at the wedding forums or the real estate listings. I opened a different browser, one I used for work, for the deep dives into corporate structures and asset portfolios. I typed in a name, the Pemberley Hotel Group. Over the next few hours, while the city outside my window transitioned from the frantic energy of the workday to the neon glow of the night, I traced the threads of a corporate empire. I found what I was looking for not in the glossy annual reports, but in the footnotes, in the debt covenants, in the quiet whispers of a company that had expanded too fast, leveraged too heavily, and was now teetering on the edge of a very public, very expensive collapse. The Pemberley Hotel Group, a chain of 5 luxury properties across the southeast, was hemorrhaging money. They had overextended on a new development in Nashville, a property that was now a half-finished concrete skeleton, a monument to bad timing and worse management. Their stock was trading at a fraction of its value. Their lenders were getting nervous. They were ripe for a takeover. And I, Kira Sterling, the invisible daughter, the overlooked sister, the jilted fiancé, had the capital, the expertise, and now, the motivation to be the one to take them down. I spent the night on the phone, not with weeping friends or sympathetic family members, but with my broker, with a mergers and acquisitions specialist I had used on a previous deal, with a private equity partner who had been courting my firm for months. By the time the sun rose over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I had the outline of a plan. It wasn't a plan for revenge. Revenge was petty, emotional, a fire that burned bright and fast and left nothing but ash. This was something else. This was a correction, a rebalancing of the scales. I was going to take the thing my sister loved, the thing she had stolen from me to build her own fantasy, and I was going to own it. I was going to own her dream. I looked at my phone. There were 14 missed calls from Marcus, 8 from my mother, and a string of text messages from Simone, a mix of faux sympathy and barely concealed glee. "I know you're upset, but you'll find another place. It's just a building. You can come to my engagement party. It's going to be so magical." I deleted the messages without reading them. I turned off my phone. I walked to the window. The city spread out beneath me, a grid of ambition and possibility. I was no longer the moon, waiting for a reflection of someone else's light. I was the sun, and I was about to rise. The acquisition of the Pemberley Hotel Group took 3 months, a period of my life that I now look back on as a masterclass in controlled fury. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my assistant, not my closest friends, not the one therapist I had briefly considered calling after the Marcus debacle. I compartmentalized. I was Kira Sterling, the financial analyst, by day crunching numbers for clients, attending meetings, pretending that the world hadn't tilted on its axis. And I was Kira Sterling, the silent predator, by night, studying debt structures, making discreet calls to investment partners, building a coalition of investors who saw the same opportunity one did, a distressed asset with immense potential, ripe for a hostile takeover. My family, predictably, assumed I was licking my wounds in private. My mother's calls became less frequent, replaced by a smug silence that spoke volumes. My father, a man named Robert who had perfected the art of benign neglect, sent a single text, "Sorry about the mix-up with the venue. Hope you're doing okay. Your mother and I are excited for Simone's party. Let us know if you want to come." He didn't ask where I was staying, how I was feeling, or what I was planning. He didn't ask because he had never asked. My entire life, my accomplishments had been met with a polite nod, my struggles with a dismissive wave. I was the easy child, the one who didn't need anything. And so, they assumed I needed nothing. Simone, of course, was in full planning mode. Her Instagram feed, which I had muted but occasionally checked with the morbid curiosity of a woman watching a train wreck, was a relentless stream of engagement party content. Dream venue secured. Thank you to my amazing fiancé Marcus for making this happen. The photo was of her and Marcus, smiling at the camera, standing in the very ballroom I had booked for my wedding. The ballroom where I had planned to walk down the aisle, where I had imagined my father giving a toast, where I had selected the centerpieces and the lighting and the menu. It was all there in her feed, a meticulously curated fantasy built on the rubble of my own. I watched it all with a stillness that surprised even me. There was no rage, no tears. Just a cold, clear focus. Every Instagram post, every self-congratulatory text from my mother, every smug comment from Simone, was another log on the fire of my determination. I wasn't just buying a hotel. I was buying a lesson. The day the deal closed, I was in a conference room on the 32nd floor of a law firm in Midtown, surrounded by lawyers in $1,000 suits and investment bankers who spoke in the clipped, precise language of high finance. The room smelled of old leather and new money. Across the table sat the CEO of the Pemberley Group, a man named Harrison Cole, who looked like he had just been told his favorite dog had died. He had fought the takeover for months, but the debt was too deep, the shareholder pressure too intense. In the end, he had no choice. He signed the papers with a hand that trembled slightly, his face a mask of professional courtesy that couldn't quite hide the personal devastation. "Congratulations, Miss Sterling," he said, pushing the final document across the table. "You've made a very aggressive acquisition." I took the pen he offered, a heavy, silver Mont Blanc, and signed my name with a steady hand. "It wasn't aggression, Mr. Cole," I said, looking him in the eye. "It was opportunity. You built a beautiful portfolio. You just lost sight of the details." He nodded, a flicker of something respect? Resignation in his eyes. "The details will be yours to manage now. I assume you have a plan for the new direction." I smiled. It was not a warm smile. "I have a very specific plan." That afternoon, I walked into the Pemberley Hotel for the first time not as a client, but as the owner. The lobby was everything Simone had always romanticized: soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, a grand staircase that curved up to the mezzanine level where the event offices were located. It smelled of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. I walked past the front desk, past the concierge, past the gawking stares of the staff who had been told to expect a new owner, but clearly hadn't expected her to look like me. I took the elevator to the third floor, to the executive suite that had once belonged to Harrison Cole. My new office. My assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia who had come with the acquisition and had already proven herself to be ruthlessly efficient, was waiting for me. She had a stack of files on the desk, a briefing on every department, every manager, every employee. The event planning department, I said, not even looking at the stack. I want a complete review. Staff, event calendars, client relations. I want to know who is responsible for the day-to-day management of the ballroom bookings. Patricia didn't blink. She pulled a file from the middle of the stack. The events department is managed by a team of 4. The director is a woman named Margot Vance. She's been with the company for 12 years. Under her, there's a senior event coordinator, a woman named Simone Sterling. She said the name without inflection, without judgment. She was a professional. Simone Sterling, I repeated, tasting the name on my tongue. And what exactly does Simone Sterling do? Patricia opened the file. She manages the social media accounts, coordinates smaller events, and handles client relations for the ballroom bookings. According to her performance reviews, she's considered charismatic, a people person. Her file notes that she is very popular with clients and vendors. It also notes that she has been late on 3 separate project deadlines in the past year and that her administrative skills are in need of development. I lean back in my chair, the leather cool against my back. And the senior event coordinator position is a senior role. She's been with the company for how long? 5 years, Patricia said. She started as an intern. 5 years. 5 years of Simone playing dress-up in this palace, posing for photos, charming clients, and never once being held accountable for the actual work of running an events department. 5 years of being the golden child in a different arena, a different audience, but the same old story. I want to meet with Margot Vance tomorrow morning, I said. And I want a full audit of the events department's booking protocols. I want to know who has access to client accounts, who has the authority to modify or transfer bookings, and what the chain of command is for any changes to a confirmed reservation. Patricia nodded, making notes. Anything else? I looked out the window of my new office, down at the city below, the same city I had looked out on from my old office, but everything looked different now. Sharper. Clearer. One more thing, I said. I want a list of all the staff events planned for the next month. The holiday party, the team-building exercises, the departmental happy hours. I want to know where they are, who's organizing them, and who's attending. Patricia paused, her pen hovering over her notepad. You're planning to attend the staff events? I turned back to her, the smile on my face now a little softer, a little more human. I'm planning to be very visible, Patricia. I'm the new owner. I want the staff to see me. I want them to know who I am. And I want to get a feel for the culture of this place before I make any changes. She nodded, her expression unreadable. I'll get the list to you by the end of the day. She left, closing the door quietly behind her. I sat alone in the office, the files still stacked on the desk, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the twilight. I picked up the file on Simone. I opened it to the first page, to the glossy headshot she had submitted for the employee directory. She was smiling, her head tilted, her hair perfectly coiffed. She looked like a woman who had never had a single thing go wrong in her entire life. I closed the file. I had spent my whole life being the responsible one, the overlooked one, the one who paid her own way and asked for nothing. I had built a career, a reputation, a life, all in the shadows of my sister's effortless radiance. And when I had finally reached for something for myself, something as simple and universal as a wedding, she had taken that too. Not out of malice, perhaps. Not even out of cruelty. She had taken it because she could. Because she had always taken what she wanted, and everyone, including my fiancé, had let her. I pulled out my phone, which I had turned back on for the first time in 3 months. There were dozens of missed calls and texts, most of them from Marcus, a few from my mother, one from my father. I scrolled through them, not reading, just looking. At the bottom was a text from Simone, sent just that morning. Mom said you're coming to the engagement party next week? I'm so glad. It's going to be the best night ever. You're going to love what I've done with the ballroom. I typed a reply, my thumbs moving with a deliberate calm. I'll be there. I put the phone down and looked at the city again. The engagement party was in 6 days. In 6 days, Simone and Marcus and my parents would gather in the ballroom that was supposed to have been mine, and they would celebrate their new life, their new family, their new beginning. And I, the invisible daughter, the jilted fiancé, would walk in as the one person they never expected. Not as a guest. As the owner. The 6 days leading up to the engagement party were a blur of activity, a carefully orchestrated campaign that I approached with the same meticulous precision I brought to any hostile takeover. I didn't just buy a hotel. I learned it. I walked its corridors at odd hours, when the guests were asleep and the staff was on skeleton crews, memorizing the layout, the shortcuts, the hidden corners. I ate in the restaurant, not as the owner, but as a regular guest, watching the service, the atmosphere, the way the staff interacted with customers. I sat in the lobby, reading a newspaper, observing the flow of traffic, the rhythm of the place. By the end of the week, I knew the Pemberley Hotel better than Simone did. I knew its strengths, its weaknesses, its secrets. And I knew exactly where the cracks were. The staff audit was completed by Thursday. Patricia, efficient as ever, had compiled a comprehensive report on the events department. The findings were damning, though not in the way I had expected. Simone, it turned out, wasn't just a popular employee. She was a liability. The audit revealed that she had, on at least 4 separate occasions, double-booked the ballroom, a logistical nightmare that had been quietly resolved by her supervisor, Margot, without any official reprimand. She had missed 3 major deadlines for client deliverables, forcing other team members to work overtime to cover for her. And, most critically, she had accessed client accounts without authorization, my account, to transfer my booking to her own name. Margot, the director, had approved the transfer after a phone call from Simone, who had claimed, falsely, that I had given my verbal consent. I sat in my office, reading the report, a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. I had the proof I needed. The question was how to use it. I called Margot into my office on Friday morning. She was a woman in her early 50s, with a no-nonsense demeanor and tired eyes that had seen too many seasons of wedding drama. She sat across from me, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap, waiting. I've reviewed the events department audit, I said, placing the folder on the desk between us. There are some concerns. She nodded, her expression carefully neutral. I assumed there would be. It's been a challenging year. I'm not talking about the budget shortfalls or the staffing issues, Margot, I said. I'm talking about the systemic problems in your department. The double bookings. The missed deadlines. The unauthorized access to client accounts. Her face tightened. I've addressed those issues internally. We have new protocols in place. You have new protocols, I agreed. But the employee who created the problems is still here. She's still in her position. She's still double-booking the ballroom and charming her way out of accountability. Margot's eyes met mine. For a moment, I saw something in them, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, or a grudging respect. You're talking about Simone Sterling. I'm talking about an employee who used her access to client accounts to transfer a confirmed booking to herself, using a false claim of verbal authorization. That's a fireable offense, Margot. It's a breach of trust. It's a violation of client confidentiality. Margot was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was lower, more careful. Simone is a difficult employee to manage. She's very popular with clients, with the vendors, with the staff. Firing her wouldn't be simple. It would create a lot of noise. I'm not afraid of noise, Margot, I said. I'm the one who makes the noise now. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment she put the pieces together. The new owner. The canceled wedding. The sister. The name. Her face paled slightly. You're her sister. I'm her employer, I corrected her. And I'm going to do what should have been done a long time ago. I'm going to hold her accountable. Margot didn't argue. She didn't defend Simone. She just nodded slowly and said, "What do you need from me?" "I need you to be in your office tomorrow afternoon," I said. "The engagement party is tomorrow night. I'll be attending. And before the party begins, I'll be making a personnel change." She stood up, her movements a little stiff. "And after that?" I stood as well, looking her in the eye. "After that, you and I are going to rebuild this department. Properly. With people who understand that this is a business, not a social club. You're good at your job, Margot. You've been carrying this department for years. I'm going to give you the resources and the authority to do it right. But you have to be willing to make the hard calls." She nodded again, her expression unreadable. "I'll be in my office." She left. I sat back down, my heart beating a steady, measured rhythm. I was not nervous. I was not excited. I was simply, inexorably, doing what needed to be done. That evening, I went to the hotel's rooftop bar, a place I had scouted earlier in the week. It was a popular spot, with a panoramic view of the city and a crowd that was a mix of hotel guests and local socialites. I sat at a corner table, nursing a glass of wine, and watched. I saw the event staff setting up for the engagement party in the ballroom below, their movements quick and efficient. I saw the florists delivering arrangements of white roses and hydrangeas, Simone's favorite. I saw the caterers setting up the seafood station, the carving station, the champagne tower. It was going to be a lavish affair. It was going to be the kind of party Simone had always dreamed of, the kind of party she had taken for me to create for herself. I thought about Marcus. About the 4 years we had spent together. About the way he had looked at Simone, the way he had always looked at her, with a kind of easy admiration that I had mistaken for brotherly affection. I thought about the night he proposed, the way he had gotten down on one knee on that beach in the Maldives, the way the waves had lapped at his feet, the way he had looked up at me with those clear, blue eyes and said, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you." I had believed him. I had believed in him. And now I understood that I had been a placeholder, a safe harbor, a woman who was steady and reliable and easy to leave when something brighter came along. I finished my wine and stood up. I walked to the edge of the rooftop, the city lights glittering below me like a scattered handful of jewels. I had built a life from nothing. I had built a career that people respected. I had built a reputation for being smart, for being capable, for being the one who got things done. And now I was going to build something else. I was going to build a future that didn't include any of them. Tomorrow, I would walk into that ballroom, not as a jilted sister or a heartbroken ex, but as the woman who held all the cards. Tomorrow, I would show them exactly who I was. And when I was done, Simone's dream job would be a memory. Marcus's easy smile would be a mask he could no longer wear. And my parents would finally, irrevocably, have to see me. The evening of the engagement party arrived, draped in the golden haze of a perfect Atlanta autumn. The Pemberley Hotel was a hive of activity, the kind of frenetic, controlled chaos that precedes any major event. Valets in crisp uniforms jogged to retrieve cars. Guests in designer dresses and tailored suits milled around the lobby, their laughter echoing off the marble floors. The scent of expensive perfume and fresh flowers was thick in the air. I watched it all from the mezzanine level, standing in the shadow of a massive column, invisible to the crowd below. I was wearing a dress I had bought for the occasion, not white, not the pale pink of a guest, but a deep, commanding navy blue. It was the color of authority, the color of ownership. I saw my parents arrive first. My mother, Celeste, was in a beaded champagne gown, her hair perfectly coiffed, her smile fixed in place. My father, Robert, followed a step behind, his expression a mask of polite boredom. They were greeted by a flurry of staff, ushered towards the ballroom with the deference they expected, the deference they had always demanded. I saw them scan the room, looking for familiar faces, for Simone, for Marcus. They didn't look up. They never looked up. Marcus arrived next, alone. He was wearing a charcoal suit that I recognized, one I had helped him pick out for a work event the year before. He looked handsome in that easy, unstudied way of his, but there was a tension in his jaw, a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He stood in the lobby for a moment, checking his phone, a crease of worry between his brows. He was looking for Simone, I realized. He was always looking for Simone. And then she arrived. Simone swept into the lobby like a ship coming into port, all white silk and flowing hair, a diamond choker glittering at her throat. Her laughter rang out, clear and bright, drawing every eye in the room. She was radiant, incandescent, the star around which the entire evening was meant to orbit. Marcus's face transformed when he saw her, the tension melting into a smile that was so open, so adoring, it made my chest ache with a pain I thought I had buried. He went to her, took her hand, kissed her cheek. She leaned into him, her body curving towards his with a familiarity that spoke of long intimacy. I watched them, the two people I had trusted most in the world, and I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a cold, clear certainty that I was doing the right thing. I waited until the ballroom was full, until the champagne was flowing and the music was playing, until the toasts had been made and the laughter had reached that particular pitch of unguarded celebration. Then I descended the grand staircase. I didn't rush. I walked slowly, deliberately, my heels clicking on the marble steps, the sound cutting through the ambient noise like a knife. People turned to look. A few guests recognized me, their faces flickering with confusion, with curiosity, with the dawning realization that something was about to happen. I saw my mother's head swivel, her smile faltering as she registered my presence. I saw my father's hand tighten on his champagne glass. I saw Marcus's face go pale. And I saw Simone. She was standing near the center of the ballroom, a glass of champagne in her hand, her smile frozen on her face. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something in her eyes that I had never seen before. Fear. I reached the bottom of the stairs and walked straight towards her. The crowd parted around me, an instinctive, almost animal reaction to the force of my presence. I stopped directly in front of her, close enough to see the tiny tremor in her hand, the way her smile was now a tight, strained line. "Kira," she said, her voice too high, too bright. "You came. I'm so glad. I was worried you wouldn't make it." "I wouldn't have missed it for the world," I said. I looked past her, at Marcus, who was now standing a few feet away, his face a mask of panic. "Marcus. Good to see you." He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. My mother materialized at Simone's side, her arm a protective barrier. "Kira, this is not the time or the place," she hissed. "Whatever issues you have, we can discuss them tomorrow. This is Simone's night." "I know, Mother," I said, my voice calm, measured. "That's why I'm here." I wanted to give her my congratulations in person. I reached into the small clutch I was carrying and pulled out a single piece of paper, folded into a neat square. I held it out to Simone. "I have a gift for you. For the happy couple." Simone looked at the paper, then at me, her eyes wide. "What is it?" "Open it," I said. Her hand trembled as she took the paper. She unfolded it, her eyes scanning the text. I watched her face transform, the color draining from her cheeks, her mouth falling open. She read it twice, 3 times, as if the words would change if she looked at them long enough. Marcus stepped forward, his hand on her arm. "What is it? What does it say?" "It's a termination letter," I said, my voice carrying in the sudden, absolute silence that had fallen over the ballroom. "From the Pemberley Hotel Group. Effective immediately." Simone's head snapped up, her eyes wild. "You can't do that. You don't work here. You don't have the authority." I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips. "I'm the new owner, Simone. I bought the hotel 3 weeks ago. I have all the authority I need." The gasp that rippled through the crowd was audible. My mother clutched my father's arm, her face a mask of shock. Marcus stared at me, his mouth hanging open, the color draining from his face. And Simone, the golden child, the star of the show, stood frozen in the center of her dream party, a termination letter shaking in her hand. "You're fired," I said, the words dropping into the silence like stones into still water. "For breach of client confidentiality. For unauthorized access to client accounts. For falsifying a verbal authorization to transfer a booking that didn't belong to you." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "For stealing my wedding venue." Simone's face crumpled. It was not a pretty cry, not the carefully curated tears she posted on Instagram. It was an ugly, raw, desperate sob. She looked at Marcus, then at my parents, then back at me. "You're doing this to ruin my night," she choked out. "You're jealous. You've always been jealous." I shook my head slowly. "No, Simone. I'm not jealous. I'm just finally holding you accountable. Something no one in this family has ever done." My mother stepped forward, her face a mask of fury. "How dare you, Kira? How dare you do this to your own sister? At her engagement party. In front of all these people. You mean the engagement party she threw in the ballroom she stole from me?" I said, turning to face her. "The ballroom I booked for my wedding? The wedding Marcus and I were supposed to have, before he decided he'd rather be with her." My mother's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had nothing to say. I looked at Marcus. He was staring at the floor, his shoulders hunched, a man who had just realized the ground he was standing on had turned to quicksand. "You knew what she did, Marcus. You knew she went behind my back, and you let her. You chose her. Again." I shook my head. "You made your choice. And now, I'm making mine." I turned back to Simone. "The Pemberley is mine now. Your job is gone. Your dream venue is gone. And you," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that only she could hear, "are nothing here. You were never anything here. You were just a girl who was good at taking pictures and charming people who didn't look too close." "But I look close, Simone. I always have." I straightened up, smoothed the front of my dress, and looked around the ballroom. At the frozen guests, the silent staff, the shattered remnants of a party that would now be remembered for a very different reason. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. "The champagne is on the house." And then I turned and walked back up the grand staircase, my heels clicking a steady, rhythmic beat. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had said what I came to say. I had done what I came to do. The silence that followed me was the loudest applause I had ever heard. The aftermath of the engagement party was, as I had anticipated, a firestorm. My phone, which I had silenced and placed in my desk drawer the moment I returned to my office, buzzed incessantly for the next 48 hours. Messages from family friends I hadn't spoken to in years, from distant cousins who had heard the story through the gossip mill, from my mother's bridge club, from my father's golf buddies. The story had spread with the speed of a wildfire in dry brush, each retelling adding new layers of drama, new embellishments, new judgments. In some versions, I was a heartless monster who had destroyed her sister's life out of spite. In others, I was a wronged woman seeking righteous vengeance. In all of them, I was the central figure, the architect of a public reckoning that no one in my family had ever imagined possible. I didn't read the messages. I didn't answer the calls. I didn't engage. I had made my statement, and it was complete. Whatever came next was theirs to deal with, not mine. I threw myself into the work of running the hotel. There was, as it turned out, a great deal to do. The Pemberley Group had been mismanaged for years, its potential buried under layers of debt and bad decisions. I brought in a new management team, people I had worked with before, people who understood that a luxury hotel was not just about chandeliers and champagne, but about efficiency, profitability, and a clear, sustainable vision for the future. I fired the catering director, who had been padding invoices for years. I renegotiated contracts with vendors who had been overcharging for substandard services. I walked the halls, meeting the housekeeping staff, the bellhops, the kitchen workers, learning their names, their stories, their grievances. I was not a distant owner, a faceless corporation. I was there, in the trenches, doing the work. Margot Vance, the events director, became my unexpected ally. She was a pragmatist, a woman who had learned to navigate the treacherous waters of the hospitality industry with a quiet, unshakable confidence. She had seen Simone for what she was, a charming liability, for years, but had lacked the authority to do anything about it. Now, with my backing, she began to restructure the events department from the ground up. She hired a new senior coordinator, a woman named Elena who had a decade of experience managing high-profile events and a no-nonsense attitude that matched Margot's own. She implemented new booking protocols, new client communication standards, new accountability measures. Within a month, the department was running more smoothly than it had in years. Simone, predictably, did not go quietly. She hired a lawyer, a bulldog of a man who specialized in wrongful termination claims. He sent me a letter, full of legal jargon and veiled threats, alleging that I had fired my sister out of personal animosity, not professional necessity. I forwarded the letter to my own legal team, a group of sharp, aggressive attorneys who handled all of my business affairs. They drafted a response that was a masterpiece of cold, clinical precision. They laid out, in excruciating detail, the evidence of Simone's misconduct, the audit results, the documented double bookings, the missed deadlines, the unauthorized access to my client account. They attached a copy of the termination letter, signed by me, with a clear, unambiguous citation of the company policies she had violated. They concluded by noting that any further legal action would be met with a countersuit for damages, including the cost of the wedding I had been forced to cancel, the emotional distress caused by her actions, and the reputational harm to the Pemberley brand. I never heard from her lawyer again. My parents, too, eventually made their way to me, though not in the way I had expected. I received a letter from my father, not a call or a text, but a formal, handwritten letter on his personal stationery. It was the kind of letter a CEO writes to a subordinate, not a father writes to a daughter. He didn't apologize for what Simone had done. He didn't acknowledge the years of neglect, the casual dismissals, the constant preference for her over me. He simply expressed his disappointment in my public display of hostility and suggested that I consider the long-term implications of my actions on family unity. I read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. My mother, predictably, chose a different approach. She showed up at the hotel a week after the party, unannounced, dressed in a power suit that was meant to intimidate. She swept past the front desk, past the concierge, and into the lobby, her heels clicking a sharp, angry rhythm. I was in my office, reviewing the monthly financials, when Patricia buzzed me. "Your mother is here to see you, Miss Sterling." She's rather insistent. I looked at the clock. It was 3 in the afternoon. Send her up. My mother entered my office like a general entering a conquered territory, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the size of it, the view, the furniture. She sat down in the chair across from my desk without being invited, her back straight, her chin high. "You've done quite well for yourself, Kira," she said, her voice cool. I had no idea. "No," I agreed. "You didn't." She folded her hands in her lap. "I'm not here to fight with you. I'm here to talk about your sister." "My sister is no longer an employee of this hotel," I said. "There's nothing to discuss." "She's devastated," my mother said, her voice tightening. "She's lost her job, her reputation. She can't show her face anywhere in this city. Marcus is struggling. They've postponed the wedding." I felt a flicker of something that might have been satisfaction, but I pushed it down. "Those are the consequences of her actions, Mother. Not mine." My mother's composure cracked, just a little. "She's your sister, Kira. She's family. You don't destroy family." I leaned back in my chair, looking at this woman who had spent my entire life making me feel small, invisible, unworthy. "You destroyed me," I said, my voice quiet. "You destroyed me 1,000 times, in 1,000 small ways, over 30 years. You chose her, always. You gave her everything, and you gave me nothing. You let her take my fiancé. You let her take my wedding. And when I finally stood up for myself, you called me dramatic." My mother's face paled. "That's not fair." "It's the truth," I said. "And the truth is, I don't owe you anything. I don't owe her anything. I built this life myself, without your help, without your approval, without your love. And I will not let you or her or anyone else tear it down." She stared at me, her mouth open, her eyes wide. For a moment, I saw something in her face that I had never seen before. It wasn't love. It wasn't even respect. It was fear. She was afraid of me. And in that moment, I realized that I was no longer the invisible daughter. I was the one with the power. If Simone wants a job, I said, my voice softening just a fraction, she can apply for one. There's an opening in the marketing department. Entry level. It pays a fraction of what she was making. She'll have to work for it. She'll have to prove herself. There will be no special treatment. She will be held to the same standards as every other employee. My mother's face tightened. You would make her work for you? After everything. I would give her a chance, I said. The same chance I would give anyone. What she does with it is up to her. She stood up, her movements stiff, her face a mask of barely contained fury. You've become hard, Kira. Hard and cold. I stood as well, meeting her gaze. I've become what I had to become, Mother. I've become what you and Dad and Simone made me. And I'm not sorry for it. She left without another word. I watched her walk to the elevator, her back straight, her head high, a queen retreating from a battle she had lost. I sat back down at my desk, my hands steady, my heart calm. I had given Simone a door. It was a small door, a narrow door, a door that led to a place she had never been before. But it was a door. Whether she walked through it was up to her. I had done my part. I had given her the same thing I had given myself all those years ago, a chance to build something from nothing. The weeks that followed were a strange, suspended time. The initial fury of the family scandal began to fade, replaced by the quiet, steady work of rebuilding. The hotel was thriving under the new management. The events department, now led by Margot and her new team, was booking more events than ever before, their reputation for professionalism and excellence spreading through the city's social circles. The restaurant had been revamped, the menu redesigned by a young chef I had poached from a competitor. The occupancy rate was climbing. The financials were finally, blessedly, in the black. I didn't hear from Simone. I didn't expect to. The door I had left open for her remained open, but she made no move to walk through it. I heard through the grapevine that she had moved back in with my parents, that Marcus had taken a job in another city, that the engagement was, for all intents and purposes, over. I felt a small, quiet pang at that, not for Marcus, but for the idea of what might have been. I had loved him once. Or I had loved the idea of him, the idea of a partner, a future, a family of my own. But that idea had been a fantasy, built on a foundation of sand. The truth was that he had never been mine. He had always been hers. I threw myself into my work with a focus that bordered on obsession. The hotel was no longer just a business venture. It was my sanctuary, my proof, my monument to everything I had built on my own. I was there early in the morning, walking the halls, checking the kitchens, reviewing the bookings. I was there late at night, sitting in my office, the city lights twinkling below me, planning the next phase, the next project, the next expansion. I was not running from my past. I was building my future. One evening, about a month after the engagement party, I was in the hotel restaurant, having a quiet dinner alone. I had become a regular there, a familiar figure to the staff, who treated me with a mixture of respect and wariness. I was the owner, after all, the woman who had walked into a party and fired her own sister. I was a character in the hotel's lore now, a story told to new employees in hushed tones. I was finishing my meal when the hostess approached my table. "Miss Sterling? There's a woman at the front desk asking to see you. She says her name is Simone. She doesn't have a reservation." I felt a flicker of surprise, quickly suppressed. I had not expected this. I had given Simone a door, but I had not expected her to have the courage to walk through it. "Send her up," I said. "To my office." I finished my wine, paid my bill, and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. I walked into my office and stood by the window, looking out at the city, waiting. A few minutes later, Patricia knocked. "Miss Sterling, your sister is here." "Send her in." The door opened and Simone walked in. She looked different than she had at the party. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple blouse and a pair of dark jeans. Her hair was pulled back in a plain ponytail. Her face, stripped of makeup, was pale and drawn. She looked, for the first time in her life, like a woman who had been humbled. She stood in the middle of the room, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes fixed on the floor. "You said there was a job," she said, her voice barely a whisper. In marketing. Entry level. I didn't move from the window. There is. She swallowed, her throat working. I want it. I turned to look at her. Why? She met my eyes for the first time, and I saw something there that I had never seen before. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't charm. It was honesty. Because I have nothing, she said. I lost Marcus. I lost my job. I lost my reputation. I've been living in Mom and Dad's guest room for a month, and I can't stay there anymore. I need to work. I need to build something. Something of my own. I walked to my desk and sat down. The job is yours. If you want it. But there are conditions. She nodded, her eyes wary. You will start at the bottom. You will work under Elena, the new marketing director. She's tough. She's fair. She will not give you any special treatment. You will earn your place, just like everyone else. I understand. You will not use your family connections to advance. You will not ask me for favors. You will not discuss our personal history with your colleagues. You will be Simone Sterling, the new marketing assistant. Nothing more. She nodded again, her jaw tight. I picked up a folder from my desk and held it out to her. This is the employee handbook. Read it. There's a training session tomorrow morning at 8. Don't be late. She took the folder, her hands trembling slightly. She looked at it, then at me. Why are you doing this? After everything I did. I leaned back in my chair, looking at her. Because I know what it feels like to have nothing. To be the one no one believes in. And I know what it takes to build something from that place. I did it. Now, it's your turn. She stood there for a long moment, the folder clutched to her chest. Then, she did something I never expected. She bowed her head. Thank you, she whispered. I know I don't deserve it. Deserve has nothing to do with it, I said. This is about what you do now, not what you did before. She left, closing the door quietly behind her. I sat in my office for a long time, the silence settling around me like a blanket. I had done what I set out to do. I had taken back what was stolen from me. I had exposed the truth. And now I had given my sister a chance to find her own truth, to build her own life, to become something other than the golden child who had been given everything and had never learned to earn anything. Whether she would take that chance, I didn't know. But it was hers now. And that, I realized, was the only thing that mattered. Simone started her new job on a Tuesday. I watched her from a distance, not as a sister, but as an employer. She arrived at 7:45, 15 minutes early, dressed in a simple black dress that was appropriate but unremarkable. She was nervous. That was clear from the way she clutched her bag, the way she scanned the lobby as if looking for an escape route. But she was there. That was the important thing. Elena, the marketing director, met her in the lobby and escorted her to the department's office on the second floor. I had briefed Elena thoroughly. I told her that Simone was a new hire with a checkered past, that she was to be treated like any other entry-level employee, and that her performance would be evaluated on its own merits, nothing else. Elena, who was nothing if not professional, had simply nodded and said, understood. For the first few weeks, Simone was invisible. She worked in the background, doing the tasks that no one else wanted, data entry, filing, organizing the digital archives. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for special treatment. She just showed up, day after day, and did the work. I saw her sometimes, in the hallway or the elevator, and she would nod politely, her eyes downcast, and move on. She was not the Simone I had known. That Simone was loud, demanding, always the center of attention. This Simone was quiet, watchful almost, humble. My parents, predictably, were not happy. My mother called me several times, her voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. You've made her a secretary, she said, the word dripping with disdain. Your own sister. A secretary. She's a marketing assistant, Mother, I said. It's an entry-level position. It's what she qualified for. She could have been a director, my mother snapped. She could have been a vice president. You're humiliating her. She humiliated herself, I said. I'm giving her a chance to rebuild. That's more than she ever gave me. My mother hung up on me. I didn't call back. The months passed. The hotel continued to thrive. The new restaurant was a critical and commercial success, earning a rave review in the local paper. The events calendar was booked solid for the next 6 months. The occupancy rate was the highest it had been in a decade. I was proud of what I had built, prouder than I had ever been of anything in my life. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Simone began to change. She started volunteering for extra projects. She stayed late to help with the social media campaign for the new restaurant. She came up with a proposal for a series of wellness retreats that was so well-researched, so innovative, that Elena presented it to me as a potential new revenue stream. I approved it, and Simone was put in charge of the planning. She threw herself into it with a focus I had never seen in her before. She was no longer the girl who coasted on charm and family connections. She was a woman who was learning to work. I didn't interfere. I didn't offer advice or praise. I just watched, from a distance, as she began to carve out a place for herself. It was, I realized, the same thing I had done. The same thing I had always done. She was learning to be invisible, to do the work without expecting applause. She was learning to earn. The wellness retreats were a hit. They sold out within a week of being announced, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Guests praised the attention to detail, the thoughtful programming, the seamless execution. Simone was given a raise and a new title, Marketing Coordinator. It was a small promotion, but it was earned. And for the first time since she had walked into my office, I saw her smile. Not the bright, performative smile of her Instagram days, but a small, quiet smile of genuine satisfaction. A few days after her promotion, she knocked on my office door. It was late, almost 8 o'clock. The hotel was quiet, the lobby empty, the restaurant winding down. I was still at my desk, reviewing the quarterly reports. "Come in," I said. She opened the door and stood in the doorway, hesitant. She was holding a folder in her hands. "I wanted to show you something," she said. "The proposal for the next phase of the wellness program. Elena said I should run it by you before I present it to the board." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Sit down." She sat, her movements still a little nervous, but more confident than they had been. She opened the folder and began to walk me through her proposal. It was good. It was very good. She had done her research, crunched the numbers, anticipated the potential pitfalls. She was thinking like a manager, not like an assistant. When she finished, I leaned back in my chair and looked at her. "This is solid work, Simone. I'll approve it. Present it to the board next week." She nodded, her eyes bright. "Thank you." She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. She turned back to me, her expression serious. "I know I don't say this enough," she said, "but I'm sorry." That afternoon, I returned to the hotel. There was a small reception in the ballroom, a celebration for the hotel's staff, marking the successful first year under new ownership. It was not a grand affair, not the kind of lavish party Simone would have planned. It was a simple gathering with good food, good music, and a genuine sense of camaraderie. The staff had worked hard, and they deserved to celebrate. I arrived just as the party was getting started. The ballroom, the same ballroom where Simone had held her engagement party, was transformed. The white roses and hydrangeas were gone, replaced by simple, elegant centerpieces of autumn leaves and candles. The champagne tower was a modest one, the food a buffet of the restaurant's signature dishes. It was warm, welcoming, real. I saw Simone across the room. She was talking to Elena, laughing at something, her face relaxed, her posture easy. She was wearing a simple black dress, nothing like the designer gowns she had once worn. She looked, I realized, like she belonged. I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations, shaking hands, listening to the staff's stories. Patricia, my assistant, handed me a glass of champagne. "You should say a few words," she said. "They'd like to hear from you." I nodded, and she went to get the microphone. I stood in the center of the ballroom, the same spot where Simone had stood a year ago, her termination letter shaking in her hand. The room fell silent. "A year ago," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I stood in this ballroom and did something that shocked a lot of people. I fired my sister. I took control of this hotel. And I made a choice to build something new." I looked around the room. at the faces of the staff, at the people who had worked so hard to make this place succeed. This past year has been about building a business, building a team, building a future. And I couldn't have done it without all of you. I raised my glass to the Pemberley, to the future, and to building something that lasts. The room erupted in applause, and I saw Simone at the back of the room, her glass raised, her eyes bright. She was smiling, not the bright, performative smile of her past, but a small, quiet smile of genuine happiness. She was proud, I realized. Proud of what we had built. Proud of herself. After the toast, the party continued. I moved through the crowd, talking to the staff, listening to their stories, their hopes, their dreams. I was no longer the distant owner, the woman who had walked into a party and fired her sister. I was part of the team. I was one of them. Later that evening, as the party was winding down, Simone found me. She was standing near the window, looking out at the city lights, a glass of water in her hand. "It's beautiful," she said, without turning around. "What you've done here. I never really saw it before. The potential. The vision." I stood beside her, looking out at the same lights. It took a while to see it myself. She was quiet for a moment. "I'm leaving," she said. "Not because I'm unhappy. Because I'm ready. There's a hotel in Charleston. They're looking for a marketing manager." I applied. "I think I'm going to get the job." I looked at her. She was different now. Stronger. More sure of herself. "You'll be good at it," I said. She turned to face me, her eyes meeting mine. "I learned from the best." I smiled. It was a real smile, the kind that comes from a place of genuine warmth. "You learned from yourself, Simone. You always had it in you. You just needed to find it." She nodded, a single tear slipping down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. "I'll miss this place," she said. "I'll miss you." I reached out and took her hand. It was a small gesture, but it was the first time I had touched her in years, the first time I had offered her anything that wasn't conditional, wasn't transactional. "You'll be back," I said. "You'll always have a place here." She squeezed my hand, then let go. She walked away, through the emptying ballroom, out the door, and into the night. I stood by the window, watching her go, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Simone left for Charleston 2 weeks later. She didn't make a big announcement, didn't post about it on social media. She simply gave her notice, worked out her final days, and left. I received a text from her the morning she departed. "Thank you. For everything. I'll make you proud." I typed a reply, "You already have." The months that followed were a time of quiet growth, for both the hotel and for me. The Pemberley continued to flourish, its reputation as one of the city's premier luxury hotels firmly established. The wellness retreats that Simone had launched became a signature offering, attracting guests from across the country. The restaurant earned a second rave review, this time from a national publication. We were profitable, stable, and poised for expansion. I had done what I set out to do. I had built something that would last. My relationship with my parents remained distant, but not hostile. They had learned, finally, that I was not a child to be dismissed, not a daughter to be ignored. They had learned that I was a woman of substance, a woman of power. They didn't apologize, I didn't expect them to, but they had stopped trying to manipulate me, to guilt me, to make me feel small. That was enough. That was more than enough. Marcus, I heard, had moved to Texas. He was working for a construction company, living a quiet life far from the drama of the Vance family. I wished him well, not because I still loved him, but because I had let go of the anger. He had been a fool, but he had been a fool I had once cared for. And holding on to that anger would only poison the peace I had worked so hard to build. One evening, about 6 months after Simone left, I received a package in the mail. It was a small box, wrapped in plain brown paper, with no return address. I opened it in my office, curious. Inside was a framed photograph. It was a picture of me and Simone, taken when we were children at a family picnic. We were sitting on a blanket, our arms around each other, laughing at something off camera. We were young, innocent, unburdened by the years of competition and resentment that would come later. On the back of the frame, in Simone's handwriting, was a note. "This is how I want to remember us." I held the frame for a long time, looking at the two little girls in the photograph. They were not the women we had become, but they were the women we could have been, the women we might still become. I placed the frame on my desk, next to the picture of Kira's grove. It was a small thing, a fragile thing, but it was a start. I called Simone that night, for the first time in months. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm. "Kira, I was just thinking about you." "I got your package," I said. "The photograph. Do you like it?" "I love it," I said. And I meant it. We talked for an hour, about her new job, about the hotel, about the park. We didn't talk about the past, not directly. There was no need. The past was a river that had already flowed under the bridge. We were standing on the other side now, looking forward, not back. When we hung up, I sat in my office, the city lights twinkling below me, and felt a sense of completion I had never known. I had spent my whole life trying to prove something to my family, to show them that I was worthy of their love, their attention, their respect. And in the end, I had proven it to myself. I had built a business, a reputation, a life, all on my own. I had stood up to the people who had dismissed me, and I had not backed down. I had given my sister a chance to become something more than the golden child, and she had taken it. I had made peace with my parents, not because they deserved it, but because I needed it. I looked at the photograph on my desk, at the two little girls laughing in the sun, and I smiled. We were not those girls anymore. We were something new, something stronger, something we had built ourselves. A year later, almost to the day, I stood in the ballroom of the Pemberley Hotel again. But this time, it was not for a party or a confrontation. It was for a wedding. Not my wedding. I had no plans to walk down any aisles in the near future, but the wedding of a friend, a woman I had met through the hotel's events department, a woman who had become one of the closest confidants I had ever had. Her name was Maya, and she was the head of the hotel's accounting department, a woman of quiet competence and fierce loyalty. She was marrying a chef she had met at the restaurant's opening night, a man who looked at her the way Marcus had never looked at me. It was a small wedding, intimate, personal, exactly the kind of wedding I would have wanted for myself. I stood at the back of the ballroom, watching the ceremony unfold. The room was decorated not with the lavish excess of Simone's engagement party, but with simple, elegant touches that reflected Maya's taste. White roses, soft candlelight, a string quartet playing a piece she had chosen herself. It was beautiful. It was real. As the ceremony ended and the reception began, I found myself thinking about the past 2 years. About the betrayal, the anger, the cold, focused fury that had driven me to buy this hotel, to fire my sister, to dismantle the carefully constructed illusion of my family's perfection. I thought about the loneliness of those early months, the long nights in my office, the sense of being completely, utterly alone. I thought about the slow, painstaking work of rebuilding, not just a business, but a life. And I thought about the strange, unexpected gift of forgiveness, the way it had crept up on me, not as a grand gesture, but as a quiet letting go. I was standing near the bar, a glass of champagne in my hand, when I felt a presence beside me. I turned, and there was Simone. She looked different than she had a year ago. The nervousness was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. She was wearing a simple green dress, her hair loose, her face relaxed. She was beautiful, not in the flashy, demanding way of her past, but in a deeper, more authentic way. "Maya's wedding is beautiful," she said, her eyes on the dance floor. "It is," I agreed. We stood in silence for a moment, watching the guests dance, the children run, the photographer capture moments that would become memories. "I've been thinking about coming back," Simone said, her voice low. "To Atlanta. There's a marketing director position opening at a hotel downtown. They've been recruiting me." I looked at her. "You'd be good at it." She smiled. "I learned from the best." I laughed, a genuine laugh that surprised us both. "You did okay on your own, too." She nodded, her eyes meeting mine. "I did. But I missed this. Missed you." I thought about the years we had wasted, the competition, the resentment, the silence. I thought about the photograph on my desk, the two little girls laughing in the sun. I thought about the woman standing beside me, a woman who had been given everything and had learned, finally, to earn something of her own. "You'll always have a place here," I said, echoing my words from a year ago. "If you want it." She reached out and took my hand. "I want it." We stood there, two sisters, holding hands, watching a wedding that was not ours, but that felt, in some strange way, like a beginning. The ballroom was warm with light and laughter, the champagne was flowing, and the music was playing a slow, sweet melody. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt whole. Not because I had one. Not because I had proven anything. But because I had, finally, let go of the need to be anything other than what I was. I was Kira Sterling. I was the owner of the Pemberley Hotel. I was a woman who had built something from nothing. And I was, at last, at peace. The reception continued late into the night. I danced with the hotel's chef, who was a surprisingly good dancer. I shared a bottle of wine with Margot, who told me stories about the hotel's wild early days. I watched Simone, who was now laughing with Maya's mother, her face open and unguarded. And when the last guests had left and the ballroom was quiet, I stood alone in the center of the room, the same spot where I had stood 2 years before, and I smiled. The past was behind me. The future was ahead. And for the first time, I was ready to walk into it, not alone, but with the sister I had found again, the life I had built, and the peace I had earned. This story is not just about revenge. It is about truth, pain, and rising stronger than before. If this hit your heart, then you know what to do. Like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more real stories that burn like fire. Until next time, stay sharp, stay loud, stay rebel.